Does somebody know
I'm
what?
Okay, you mean you want me to read first?
One moment,
Is that-
please. Everyone, I'm going to mute you. Everyone.
I can't see anybody.
And whoever wants to speak now, unmute. You have to unmute yourselves.
Understood.
George, you wanted me to read first? Or did you want me to introduce you or?
Introduce me and then, then we'll kick it off.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Poetry Bay Productions first Zoom reading to celebrate the release of George's wonderful anthology, New York City from the Inside, published by Blue Light Press. And so we have a wonderful afternoon for you. And I'm going to give you George, our wonderful host and editor who did such a beautiful job on this anthology, George Wallace.
I thank you, Francine. I call it our anthology because it is our anthology. Nearly everybody in the room today is in the anthology or a very big supporter of it one way or another. And I want to thank you for that support and your participation in all the different ways that you have. We are being engineered today by Don Krieger, who has been very helpful to me in a number of projects. He does a lot of very good engineering work for a lot of different people in poetry. And I think he deserves a round of applause for that. Thank you for chipping in with this, Don. Thank you for doing that. And Don is streaming this live onto Facebook, many different locations, but primarily initially to Cultivating Voices. He's put the link in chat if you need to copy that and paste it over to somebody else. Otherwise, we are going to be welcoming people in that have already registered to be part of this or watch this. We'll be streaming it. We'll be recording it for YouTube later on. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I see Sharon Mesmer has arrived. So we have with us today from our group of people scheduled to read, Austin Alexis, Bruce Weber, Dennis Nurkse, Don Yorty, Ellaraine Lockie, for joining us from San Francisco, Frank Murphy, George Guida from upstate New York somewhere. Bruce is also upstate, I believe. Kofi Forson, Meg Pokrass, who's now in Scotland. She's living in Scotland for the past, I don't know how long, but that's an amazing thing. Phillip Giambri is here, and Sharon Mesmer is here. Sharon, welcome. Good to see all of you here, all of you readers. This is like Francine says, this is our first Zoom reading. We're going to be having a number of them. We're going to be having pop-up readings, various locations. Those of you who are in the book and are here today, I believe that you're all scheduled to be in one of the readings at least, but we certainly want to get you involved, in readings, either live or in Zoom over the next couple of months. And we have a lot of them, including one upstate that Bruce is putting together, which should be a lot of fun. We have one out in San Francisco as well that Diane Frank, the publisher of Blue Light Press, is going to be doing. Well, we're in the birthplace. We're going to be Zooming up with Lorraine Corelli up in Bronx at the Bronx Library, which is a very nice show. And we're going to be live. I think our first live one, aside from the kick-ass thing that we did down in Philadelphia, is going to be at the El Barrio Art Space in the Bronx, and that's courtesy of Jesus Papaletto Melendez. So that's going to be a lot of fun too. Stay tuned to all of the different things we're doing. Thank you for being part of this. I'm in love with the book. It's been really a pleasure. I'm going to show the book off, even though it's in the back of Don Krieger as we speak. He's got it up on a screen behind him. I want to figure out how to do that so I can do that in the future myself. So So that's the deal. And thank you. I hope we have a good time. And all of you out there in Facebook land and YouTube land, thank you for joining us and watching the show. I'll say very, very quickly, New York City from the Inside is a book of 179 poets across the country who are affiliated and associated in some way with New York City, write about it because they're from here or are here now or have very, very strong memories of it and of New York City. A few of them have passed on, and we regret their loss, as we do all of the great poets who we've known over the years, and some of them are contributors to this book. And we may get a chance to read one or two of those as well. We'll see how the time goes. I have to thank Francine Witte because she's been very instrumental in so many different things that we're doing with the book, and she's really stepped up to the plate as I grow older and older and have less hair and less memory and less capacity for stress. She's picked up a lot of it for me, so I do appreciate that, Francine. So Don and Francine, thank you both for that. And Sharon is saying, yay, Francine, and well deserved. So we're going to kick it off just because, I just gave her a plug. We'll kick it off with Francine, let her read first. And then I'm going to go, I think, alphabetically by first name. We're going to go with the people who are on the list, and you're welcome to read 2 poems each, and we'll see how the timing goes, and then check out what happens after that.
Okay, thank you, George, and thank you also to Don for this hosting this whole thing, which is really awesome. He does such a wonderful job with so many things, and thank all of you for being here. So I'm going to read my poem, and then we're all reading a second poem. I don't know if I keep saying that, but sometimes I say things a lot. Okay, this is my poem from the anthology. The moon takes the E train, stumbles drunk from a downtown dive, swirling himself milk into coffee down the stairs and onto the train, and then forgets his way home. Gets off instead at 40 Deuce, looks around and remembers the old style scene, hookers and cornflakes, how often in his fullness he would push some poor sucker into Mr. Nasty's peep show, watch him skulk out later, face wiped off, slither home to bridge and tunnel, lighter $20. But then the whole place went carnival, wax museums and kiddie theater, life-size Elmo and Elsa, who will pose with you for a hefty tip. And he's looking around at all the lights blinking into the darkened dark. And that's when a couple approaches the moon and asks to take a selfie. How much it would mean, what with the moon being the thing that made them fall in love. And the moon has heard this all before, how he's pulled the tides and planted romance, but really he has a long, long night ahead trying to remember which subway will take him back to the sky. But instead, the moon takes a breath, looks at his reflection in the couple's eyes, nestles in between them and smiles. The second one, I also wrote based on this New York theme, and this is really true. I just got my hair cut and was walking up Madison Avenue, and I saw Paul McCartney, and I said, I must have said something to him, and I had my headphones in. He said something to me, but I don't know what it was. Anyway, this is what the poem is. Seeing Paul on Madison Avenue, McCartney, not the apostle, and me walking past Vera Wang or Michael Kors, that small blip of Manhattan up past the hum of trucks and bicycle slice, that part that seems more grown up, subdued, just like adulthood buffered me. But there was Paul, bigger than my I love Paul button, bigger than the Ed Sullivan show, and teenaged me was whispering, it's him, and it was. And the whole universe shrinking down to a shiver. I might have said hello, I don't recall, because everything was cotton stopped. The taxi cabs were yellow submarines. the crosswalks, Abbey Road. I floated home that afternoon thinking how impossible that would have been. Paul walking anywhere unmobbed. The city around me suddenly hushed. Thank you.
Francine Witte, thank you so much. I remember seeing cast members from Saturday Night Live at Penn Station going like, oh, hey, and I couldn't remember their names. Just saying, I really love you in Saturday Night Live, but not being able to remember their names. So, but Paul McCartney, how can you not? We're not going to start alphabetically, like I say, by first name. And also along the way, welcome Michelle Whittaker. I see has arrived. She's here. Thank you, Michelle. Get a pretty good compliment today. So our first reader, and I'm not going to introduce everybody, in bios because pretty much everybody knows everybody anyway. But if you have any question, you can put bios on the chat room. But we all love Austin Alexis. Austin.
Hi, everyone. And thank you, George, for including me in this wonderful anthology. So the first poem I'll read is the poem in the anthology. And some of you may have heard me read this 3 or 4 years ago at the Brownstone Poets Patricia's group. At Columbus Circle, if you see something, say something. I call to Christopher Columbus as he elevated, aura saturated, hand on his marble hip, casually overdressed for July, glanced past frantic cars, zooming in contrary motion, many feet beneath him, while he peered above them and beyond them into a dimension where no one hurries away from anything, nor speeds toward shifting, fleeting destinations, because in the afterlife, the land below where we are is too coarse to pay heed to, because in the afterlife, the earthly realm is a whisper scarcely heard, because in the afterlife, people already are where they need to be. And then the second poem I'll read is very recent, and it's inspired by that that story about the man who went around shooting homeless people in New York and in Washington, D.C. Targets. Zing of a .22 caliber, and they are struck, victims of a gunman, guilty of homelessness in their murderer's eyes, their punishment for poverty, death, at the hands of a mask-heavy man, a cross-hatched looking thug, playing irate judge and jury, a demon content to kill to create a society cleansed of the ills of sleeping bags filled with malnourished bodies. In his eyes, housing insecurity is a crack in the normal order, represents a felony worse than first-degree murder, slimy, aggravated murder, muddy, premeditated murder, assault with intent to murder. The gunman has charged the homeless with the crime of daring to exist. He steals from the poor in order to give to his sense of righteousness. He steals from the poor, their only possession, their pulse, their blood jet, their beating heart. Thank you.
Wow, powerful stuff. Thank you, Austin. Joining us, although he's upstate, we still a New York City guy to me. Bruce Weber, what you got for us, Bruce?
Hi, everybody. I saw Paul McCartney and his family once next to the Met, and then around 77, I saw John and Yuko and Sean in a little papoose on John's back. So I used to live near the Dakota. You ever saw Ringo or George? This poem I wrote about the Triangle Fire, and this is in the anthology. It's titled, My Sister Magdalena Was Engaged to be Married to Giuseppe. My sister Magdalena was engaged to be married to Giuseppe, who learned a trade at the industrial school on St. Mark's Place and promised to carry her away from the long days of toil sewing for pennies for her padrone. And the fire started like a whisper, hesitantly, like it was pausing in a corner before it looked into the face of God. Then it caught on a waistband and a moan rose from each floor, and the fire traveled like it was burning through paper because pounds of fabric burn easily, creating a cauldron of screams and rips and tears, searing through skin like it was made of cotton, like it was flimsy. And one narrow window led to a staircase that fell under the weight of panic, and the elevator cables snapped when someone slid down them, and the fireman's ladder reached only the 6th floor. Many died without moving, their skin seared to the bone, and someone sat at the window's edge, kissing the Star of David or crossing themselves and saying a prayer to Jesus to save them before jumping to the pavement. And Magdalena was caught in the backlash of a curl of fire, closing her mouth with one finger, instructing her to be quiet, to lay down, till she was ashen, till she floated through the charred air of Lower Broadway, drifting toward the East River, like a black cloud in the late winter sky.
Yeah.
This is like, I wrote this last year, early last year, up here in Saugerties. Sometimes I ride the F train all night. Sometimes I ride the F train all night, huddled in a corner seat, sandwiches and chips and soda at the ready for 3 a.m. hunger. I love the rattle of the train crossing out of Lower Manhattan into the splashing darkness of the city. The world is so big then, the panorama adrift in boats, making their murky way beyond safe harbors and toothless old men dreaming of lost loves. I sketch fellow passengers in pencil, catching a head fallen into sleep or alert for factory whistle, lunch boxes rustling in the wind. I recall Pound's imagistic poem, Mating Motion and Flower, the magic of shadows and the rush of morning, and close my eyes, listening for the whoosh of mighty metal legs moving powerfully through dark tunnels, rats patrol in quest of runaway cats or dogs. At Coney Island, I exit for brief stir among the sleeping dragon ride, its tail twitching in anticipation of rolling across the weaving ocean and screaming children buckled in for safety, adrift in herky-jerky dream, and return to my corner of the world, like in a painting by Vermeer, the milk poured by a still hand, reaching for infinity, slow motion snapshot captured in a paintbrush, dipped in muted tones of light, and move on, returning to underground slumber, huddled among my fellow denizens of the night, moving back and forth across the sweaty girth of this beautiful city in the dark. Thanks for listening, guys.
Whatever. Thank you, Bruce. Gorgeous, yeah.
Thanks, George.
Okay. I'll give a shout out to Chuck Joy before I move on. He's in Erie, PA, was a poet laureate of Erie, Pennsylvania. And he's been pushing our book pretty hard over in Pennsylvania, so I really appreciate it for that. Thank you, Chuck. Next up, we have Dennis Nurkse. Dennis was formerly poet laureate of Brooklyn, and I think we all know him for a variety of capacities, but glad to have you here today, Dennis. Thank you. Microphone. Dennis, you have to unmute yourself. You're
Can
on.
people hear me? Thank you, Don. Thank you, George. Thank you, Francine. I'm going to read a couple of prose poems. This poem is called Letter from Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn as we speak, deep in Brooklyn, with my Brooklynese dog at my feet. Letter from Brooklyn. All my life I feared death, passionately, dutifully, sardonically, silently. But when it came, nothing changed. I still brush my teeth, worried the cinnamon dental floss will snag in a back molar. A nose hair protrudes. I can feel it between my thumb and forefinger, but I can't see it, no matter how I angle my face to the mirror. I dress in the clothes on top of a hamper. My shoes pinch. I walk the dog on Eastern Parkway in the lightest of snows. If anything, I'm more present than when I was alive, focused on the leash, alert to yank him back from the things he loves in the gutter, a bloody tampon, the yellow intricate intestine that must have been a squirrel once. My neighbor Dolmatov is doling out peanuts to a flock of pigeons. They swoop in from nowhere, ignoring the dog's outraged stare. The ones in front gobble, me. The ones in back puff themselves up, flaunting the faint oil slick iridescence of their wings. Their poles glisten with a sheen of sleet. Dolmatov rolls each kernel in his fingers and chooses the recipient. You and you. With his free hand, he cracks the shells. His ample belly props against his walker. Snowy enough for you, he asks. Like all neighbors, he knows nothing of death. On the next block, they are converting a padlocked factory into condos, working on Sunday in bitter cold. High silhouettes in flimsy parkas race across scaffolding, sharing jokes in Nahuatl or Bengali. The child on his skateboard whizzes past me. Close as he knows, there is no distance. Distance is mine. It takes all my strength to rein the dog in. Always when I was alive, life was elsewhere. In a notebook washed blank in the laundromat, in a glance returned from the tinted window of a passing SUV. Perhaps death is also elsewhere. The little Haredi girl wants to pet the dog, furtively conscious of breaking a law, and the dog strains forward, fascinated. Fascinated. Is that the only change? That and the swiftness of the clouds, passing from Jersey to the Verrazano in a heartbeat. At night, here are the tenements of my childhood. A single lit window reigns, making the city so vast, so empty. The face that shines there, always in profile, is that my father? All my life I waited for you, passionately, bitterly, in silence, counting the breaths. And the other prose poem I think will be familiar to you is called The Screen. I mean, the premise will be. I invited my mother to visit and watch a woman being elected president. We sat in front of cable news. I swear we each thought of holding hands. After 20 minutes, we began to fidget. She excused herself to the bathroom. I chose to take a call. I buried my eyes in my cell. Our city had grown so silent. Where were the ambulances, the low-flying jets? A car passed with the rattle of a loose fan belt. A child cried in the next building. I have to go, my mother said suddenly, home to feed my Maltese. I helped her into her coat and found her gloves. We hugged a little stiffly. I heard her steps diminish in the corridor. I was left facing the screen. I tore myself away and followed her. She is old, old. I rode the next elevator down. Were our streets ever so dark? The lamps were shining with a prissy glow that disclosed nothing, that smudged whatever it touched. But I saw a silhouette with her adamant shuffle and followed it into the cold. I watched from a block away as she halted a cab, clambered in gimpily, lit a cigarette, and began chatting. The car sped away towards Queens. But it is long ago, I thought. She can smoke and flirt. Perhaps I am not even born yet. And I began walking endlessly in our vast city. Doors flew open, and the faces there were the children who died in Birmingham, in Lowndes County, and Neshoba. But the high windows were blank and pulsed with a shuddering blue light. Thank you.
Dennis Nurkse. Thank you so much, Dennis. No, I've always known Dennis just by his first initial, D. Nurkse. So that's why I have next coming up. Dennis comes after Davidson, but if we just do a D, he comes before Davidson. So we got next Davidson Garrett, one of the many very fine poets in New York City, who also happens to write about cab driving. And this particular poem in the book, which is about Kitty Carlisle, is just an amazing poem. So let's hear it from you, Davidson Garrett.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be in this book with so many wonderful poets. And thank you to dear Francine for all the work she's done today, and to Dawn. I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. And as a teenager, this particular subject of the poem was my idea of New York City. I drove a taxi in New York City from 1978 to 2018 to subsidize my artistic pursuits. I had to retire in 2018 because of my eyesight was going and because Uber killed my business. This is my poem from the book, 32 East 64th Street, the Verona. For years, the queen bee of the arts lived and entertained in this swanky Italian Renaissance style cooperative modeled after the Strozzi Palace in Florence. This gorgeous New York copy lies smack dab in the silk stocking district. A green canopy flanked by ornate lamppost shields wrought iron doors opening to a huge lobby dominated by a winding marble staircase right out of a Busby Berkeley extravaganza. Flying past in my yellow taxi on many harried evenings, I lovingly envisioned Kitty Carlisle Hart descending those rhapsodic stairs, dressed to the nines to class up our gritty city. How hollow my gut feels these last few years, sputtering by in my office on wheels, mindful the gracious lady who was emblematic of New York's artsy flair no longer resides there, but instead, caped with gossamer wings, her spirit warbles, smoke gets in your eyes for the radiant angels in Broadway heaven. Thank you. My second poem is another taxi poem. I have a brand new book that was just published by Finishing Line Press called Cabaletta. I don't know if you can see the cover, but it's called Cabaletta, Poems of a New York City Taxi Driver. And through the years, everyone always asked me what celebrities that I drove. And I drove over 100, but this poem is about my most illustrious. Appalachian Spring in my back seat. One of my shortest fares, I only drove her a block and a half from a red apartment building to her school on East 63rd Street. But as I peered dumbstruck into the cab's rearview mirror, witnessing the face of Martha Graham, I knew I was driving an iconic deity, the mother of modern dance. Thank you.
Davidson Garrett. Thank you, David. We have with us Don Yorty. Always a pleasure to see Don Yorty. He writes a lot about community gardens, but that's not all. He does a lot of recording for other people's readings. Please welcome Don Yorty.
Great. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So, George, thank you for putting me in this book with so many other great people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a lot of work. Francine, you do a lot of work. And Don Krieger, you do a lot of work as well, a lot of work. And thank you. So I'm going to read the sonnet that's in the book on page 279, and I'm between John Yao and Bill Zavatsky, which is really great. Sonnet 221. At 63, I've started to compost in La Plaza, a park I helped to save starting in 1987 and succeeding in 2002. Some things take time, like a poem you want to write, or onion skins and carrot peels rotting to loam. A lot gets done in the dark, out of sight. The evidence tells us not to give up. You have to remember it's not always fun. Sit down and do it, and it will get done. From my window, you could see the World Trade Center till 9/11. Another building rises there, making its appearance. My friends, the ends begin. So thank you, George. And I'm going to read another sonnet. Let's see, I've seen Yoko Ono in New York. I've seen JFK Jr., Lauren Bacall, and I've also seen Walt Whitman. So I'm going to read this sonnet. I guess people can see it here. I'm holding it up. So this is sonnet 50. I am singular and we are plural. I see us walking on the busy street and waiting for the bus. Each day I meet him, Walt Whitman, whose kind face I see all over the place. Or I am in his brain, because I think that poet isn't dead any more than I live. Grass in his stead comes through the sidewalk's cracks. Let it remain unnoticed as the air we breathe. New York City is just a poet's thought, and we are written on the page eternally, living then as well as now. Yet, time's short. It's important to talk and say what is. I think of him, I am a thought of his. Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Francine. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Don Yorty. As we move on, I want to give a shout out to Ellaraine Corelli, who's here. She's going to be running the Bronx Zoom program on May 21st. She's waving right now. Hello, Ellaraine. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. We have next up Ellaraine Lockie, who took a long time to find a photo of Ellaraine Lockie on the internet until I went to Alexis Roan Francher's website, and she's got like a dozen photographs of Ellaraine, all wearing that hat. So we have Ellaraine Lockie with us from San Francisco today. Please welcome Ellaraine. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Ellaraine.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh yes, Alexis and I are pretty good friends, so that's a great story. I'm so pleased and honored to be a part of this reading. I live in California, and I have been coming to New York City for a month, renting an apartment for a month every year up until COVID came. That started in 2010, and I'm so happy to be reading with several of you, Austin, Cindy, Francine, Linda, and George. I know, but we haven't spent a lot of time together, but we've met each other a few times over the years, and I fell in love with New York City. So I am very happy to be here and be part of this. I'm going to read the poem from the anthology for my first poem. There are two notes that are on the bottom of the page. John Cage was an avant-garde music composer who used silence to enable ambient surrounding sounds to become the vehicle for Zen-like contemplation. And Quiet Circus, which is a community project along the Delaware River in Philadelphia that fosters reflective activities of silence, stillness, and placement. Title of the poem is Survival Guide. There's an epigraph. After the New York Times Square sound art installation by Max Neuhaus at Broadway and 7th. When the back-to-belly buffing numbs your libido at the sight of a woman wearing only a guitar strapped over nipples and crotch. When heat of her slow burn drowns in a circus of surround sound. When skyscrapers become a big top, alive in digital discord and fireworks of flashing lights. That folds into itself like the theater discount line. And you spin in the merry-go-round of it all. Stumble off and onto Broadway's center sidewalk grid. Stand over the low drone from the subway vent. Let the hum become an OM meditation. Adrift on the F major monotone with kaleidoscope of fall leaves to the rocking chair of an ocean. The cleansed air from whoosh of waves, a prairie sweetgrass scent after rain. Tune in to a meadowlark's 6-note eulogy, a suck of celebration on a honeycomb. Surrender in the deep south to the soft hands of cotton in its bowl. As the hum becomes a John Cage kind of silence, a quiet circus of mindfulness. My second poem, which I just suddenly decided would be my second poem, was I chose it after I heard that Davidson was a taxi driver for most of his life. And this has a bit of a story to it. I grew up in Montana in a small wheat farming town, and there was an article in the paper, little paper, 700 population town. And the article, the headlines were pedestrian mowed down on the sidewalk by a taxi in New York City. And I was 8 years old and I became very afraid of New York City. So when I was in my early 60s, 2010, I decided I had to get over that fear. So I started renting the apartment for a month, and that's how I started there. And this was my first day in New York City, and I'm carrying this fear with me. Net worth in New York City. Turning the wheels on his chair opposite traffic down the center of West Broadway, cars lined behind a stoplight. The man with whiskers and one leg pulls up to the driver's window of one yellow cab after another. Each time, arms reach and hands join for an instant. On the sidewalk, my hand joins the camera in my bag. As I frame the man's mission, he looks at me. His expression is unreadable through the miniature world in the lens. But if I turned the camera on myself, the image would shout intrusion, where moments ago it would have whispered courage and kindness for this city and its body of people, where a picture is worth the cliched 1,000 words. That could have been you, Davidson. Anyway, thank you for having me and for all the extra work, especially that Francine did to get me connected up today. I so appreciate it. I'm having such a good time.
Good job. And they nicknamed you Rainey. I heard you're calling you Rainey. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my nickname. That became my poetry nickname. And
Well, Rainey, I can tell you this. I'm not Montana, but for many years now, I've had this hankering to go to Idaho, Montana, that region, because I want to hang out with Napoleon Dynamite. So that's how these things get into your head.
let me know before you go. I'll set you up with places and let this do.
Thank you. We have with us next a man who ably took over for the late, great Donald Lev, and has been publishing Home Planet News Online for a number of years now. A great asset to New York City poetry. Frank Murphy.
I want to thank, can everybody see and hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, good. I'm always afraid of, I work on Facebook quite a bit, but I am always afraid of messing up on Zoom. Thank you for including me in this wonderful anthology, which I'm holding up. Fantastic reading. The first poem I'll read is When Our Ancestors Ate Each Other, and they did. The tour bus is full today, rolling down 7th Avenue in sunlight so strong it makes one suspicious of everything. And everything poses for the tourists, taking pictures, taking videos. The buildings pose, the parks, the Washington Arc, all the sites in Greenwich Village pull their stomachs in and stand straight. And we who are New Yorkers strut down the street, knowing the other side of everything and still walking, still strutting, left foot forward, right foot back, right foot forward, left foot back, left arm back, excuse me. This is the way we walk through life. Listen, the tour guide is explaining everything, and he's got it all wrong. The second poem I'm going to read is called The New New Yorker. It happened between stations when the F train suddenly stopped. It happened in heat and darkness at 8:24 a.m. Pain and sudden birth at 8:24 a.m. It began at J Street when 16 people left the Central car and 60 got on. It continued at York, 30 more got on, no one got off. Below the East River, they came like creatures from outer space to no space at all. They came from other cars while the train moved like a slow worm through the earth. At East Broadway, 10 more kicked and gouged their way on. No one got off. At Delancey Street, they came through the windows. No one got off. At 2nd Avenue, they squeezed through vertebrae. No one got off. At Broadway, Lafayette, they came like camos through the eye of a needle. No one got off. No one got off. At West 4th Street, at 14th, at 23rd, they kept pushing on. No one got off. No one got off. The atmosphere in that one car slipped back a billion years with the pressure of 100 volcanoes, with the heat of a star between stations. The train came to a sudden stop. In that black hole moment, 6 passengers were fused together. Mind, body, soul merged into this one new being, and didn't know it until the train finally reached 42nd Street, where people started getting off. At Rockefeller Center, he, she, it left the car and walked up into the light of a new age. Confused but determined to get through the day, the new New Yorker, with 6 tongues speaking 6 languages, chanted, prayed, or just cried out to the universe, "Thank God it's Friday." Thank you.
Thank you, Frank Murphy. All right. That's great. Nobody got off. Should give a shout out to Valerie Oyster, who's with us today. He did the cover photograph for our book. Valerie's with us. He'll be reading April 30th at El Barrio Center live with a number of other readers as well. So thank you for the cover, Valerie. Our next reader is a guy I know from New York City and from Long Island and from upstate in Dansville, but many of you know from Small's Jazz Club. That's where I always think of George Guida from Small's Jazz Club. Welcome, George.
So many years ago, George. Seems like an eternity, but thank you for including me in this important and really timely anthology. New York needs more of this right now. I'm a New York expat, but I do work there, and I suspect I'll be back there someday. And I was there a couple of days ago and had an appointment. The appointment was canceled, and I was so happy. I had a whole day in New York by myself to do whatever I wanted. It's like the best day of my year so far. But I'm going to read a couple of poems from my book, New York and Other Lovers, the new edition of it. And the first one is the anthology. And let me get that up. It's called The Good People of New York City. They did not get a good night's sleep, but woke to blades of island sun through dirty blinds. The good people of New York City sit in a coffee shop, sipping Joe from a chipped ceramic mug, and hum the latest song about making it in New York City. Look, there, the good people of New York are reading tabloids at the corner stand. For a minute, they've forgotten how to pay, but look, again, they're kibitzing now with the clerk in the red flannel vest. The good people of New York City often take the subway, but today have decided to walk. It's just a few blocks to the florist, and already the rain has stopped. They're wearing tennis shoes, but no sunglasses since they don't mind being recognized. The good people of New York are walking through the park to their favorite stand of linden trees, where they unwrap knishes while the ducks splash down. Look, the good people of New York have fallen asleep in the grass, They dream of being tourists at the Statue of Liberty's feet, but wake up sure they'll never go. Back home, our good people recline on fire escapes and sketch the street. They'd head to the bodega for beer, but it's Sunday. Not that it's closed. It's just they need their wits enough to talk about the sunset over Jersey. Then the Chihuahuas will need their walks, and the good people of New York City will have to call their mothers to let them know that life is not what they thought when they used to be the good people of everywhere else. And the second poem I'll read. My tongue will be firmly in my cheek as I read this. Again, as I said, I'm a New York expat, so. The return of George Guida. George Guida announces, "I'm back, New York." Construction cranes pirouette as all the silence he's left behind rings in his ears like a zombie payphone at a subway stop. He's finally acceded to the concept of youth as culture club he can no longer join. He has aged to concrete. The Brooklyn Bridge is no longer a springboard, but a bed. He lies down because he isn't tired. His eyes are wide open to take in gray steam from the sidewalk grate and black dust from the unswept stoops. "Welcome back," calls the little girl growing up here, knowing lobbies as yards, the myth beginning again. He's cleansing himself in a cramped bathroom's miniature sink, in a railroad apartment's kitchen tub, on a fire escape in the rain. He's as back as a gentrified block in Brooklyn. You can find him at lunch on the swings by the softball fields. The pigeons have missed him and come cooing. He buys a Knish and searches for the Daily News for two-word headlines. The bridges are all alight. The inbound traffic is a symphony he conducts. A homeless woman on the steps spots him and shouts that she is home. From Houston to Harlem, he's forgiven. The Bronx knows he left in haste. He scales a tower and sings to Staten Island. An old man on a Broadway bench is telling him how lucky they both are. You don't have to be a New Yorker to understand. You just wait for the bus. You say hello to the people who ignore you as they pass, and the street takes you in. And just like that, you're alive. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, George and Francine.
Welcome back. Welcome back, George Guida. We're ready now for Kofi Forson. Kofi writes a lot about, gives us great glimpses into the latter days of the punk scene, cafe society of the 90s, and the art scene as well, especially as it moved up to Chelsea. Please welcome Kofi Forson.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much. Thank you for including me in this anthology. It's such an honor to be known as a New York poet. And thank you, Francine, for all that you do. This is the poem that was accepted for this anthology. It's called New York City is a Punk Rocker. Tell your daughter at Port Authority not to look a man between the eye. He'll drug her soon into a world of sugar daddies, make her work the street. Tell her to keep her eyes looking straight. Arch her back, walk like a woman. Arch her back, cosmopolitan, never let a man buy her a drink. Love is a stranger you meet at bars, dark rooms with red bulbs, mirror ball. Hard as a dagger, plunge deep into another, lonely women, desperate men. Soundtracks of broken hearts to rock and roll, Jamaican bars, lead guitars. Liquor pours into the night, cigarette after cigarette, tall tales, empty promises. Outside, the streets are watching. The air is tall and thin, dry scab, fingernails. Makeup polish on her face, caked lipstick too hard to kiss, but your tongue. Inside an apartment, you got the velvet on vinyl, loud stereo equipment. In the bedroom, you lay her down. She undresses her blouse, undoes her bra. Much like other breasts you've seen before, you bring them close to your lip, decking a man for looking at you with malice, breaking head with beer bottle. You fight, rolling cigarette rings, the O of your mouth, spread of smoke. She breathes caterpillar breath. Look upon her rage. What desire is this? Did your lunch in heat, attacking the heart attack, if death should come soon? Where will you live not having paid rent? Out in the streets, the heroin hustle. It eats your face, sunk in deep, holes in your hand, long-legged, muscular. Some nights she straps it on, a wicked bang. Sounds of Uzis in the background. Drug dealer at the door. Rain on Monday evening, pissed drunk after hours. Wasting time watching television. Listening to television, the talking heads. Friends from neighborhoods stop by. You roll up blinds, smoke them out. Is this someone got murdered or committed suicide? Smell of funk in the room. Tomorrow, it's band practice. Got a gig at the local bar, making a set list. Sister ran away from home. She's coming to visit. She needs a place to stay. Got sick of daddy. You like the pretty. She wants to be an NYC punk rocker. So tell her there's a boy in every corner looking to do damage. Bring her down to her knees. Get a tattoo of his name. Make her draw blood. Tell your mama and daddy, nephews, nieces, not to come to New York City. She's a punk rocker with tattoos. Listens to Johnny Thunders, a CD player. Thank you. Now, I have a long poem. I don't want to read it because it's long, but I have to read it because it's about somebody meeting Keith Richards at a bar on Avenue A. So I have to read it. It's long, but I have to read it. In keeping with the Paul McCartneys of the world, this is called Sitting with Keith at a Bar on A. Some guys walk easy. They don't strut. They are one with the ground. They are a walking flagpole, tattooed and torn, blowing in the wind. Eye of a pirate, pissed on street corners, waiting on broken bombshells. Sometimes straddling a rhythm guitar, dirty jeans, wicked alligator smile, leather skin, British boy good looks, Marlboro lip, tobacco tongue, come dirty like a knife, shaking the reggae of the street, Rasta boys. No bodyguards, no lifeguards, looking death in the eye, laughing. The tall and thin slip in like fins of sharks gritting bloody teeth. On the dark corners, they fight with breath so hard, move to the beat. In walks Keith, rock and roll goes, perpetual smoke pours from his lip. Puts his arm out for the usual. Bartender nods in agreement. The regulars make like regulars, playing cool by the jukebox, playing pool in the light, all at attention. He's angling over, locking up a doo-wop tune. So soon, he calls up a girl to dance, body tight, match light, groping the way down, falling for him, stranger, dolled up just enough in her eyes, a magic puff, backing away. He stands there watching her dance alone, smoke lifting, original Van Gogh, painting her with his eyes, ashes built at the tip. No jumping jack flash, no Rolling Stones, cock-eyed and wonderful. Blues on a Monday night, thumping through a seduced bar crowd, here to see Billy go at it again. His band is really big shit, yeah. To my left is a Marley man, to my right is Keith, tapping his knee skin, jiggling the cubes in the glass, smoking a rocket ship cigarette, blazing. His face is a weather map, takes me through Tahiti to the cold under, whispers something in my ear, can't understand, bobbing my head, smoking a rocket ship cigarette, alarming. He blows a whistle into the air, loud and above it. I give Billy the fist bump. Look at me, I got Keith sitting beside me, orange and blue, like a decked hammy boy bitching. So like he doesn't stay for the encore, makes his way out before Billy there on stage smashing his guitar. Keith would have liked that. Maybe he wasn't live with leads. He was cool with a cigarette, held that baby down, played the chords so easy, always hammering down, lighting up a crowd. Never saw him play live. Here on air, he never bothered to strap it up. Just walked in on us when we least expected, sat, listened on dangerously. We were the lucky ones. We never saw Mick, Charlie, or Ronnie. We saw Keith sitting there with a smoke, glass of firewater and cues, playing himself, a delicate British gentleman, walking wounded, crazy for the days. Thank you.
Your coffee, Forson. That wasn't too long. It was good. That was perfect. Thanks. Remind you that this is being streamed live at Cultivating Voices and other locations on Facebook and will be recorded for YouTube in the future. So you can enjoy it again. And those of you who have missed it, you'll get to hear us then. Our next reader, as I mentioned before, is living in Scotland these days. And just a side note, we have with us George Colkito from the Lake District of England, not too far from you, Meg Pokrass. Now, it's kind of like the Finger Lakes in Boston, so it's not too close, but got almost a neighbor here. Meg Pokrass, just piques my envy unbelievably about having been in the Norton Anthology of Flash Fiction 2 times. But she writes about, at least in this poem that she has in the collection, her experiences auditioning and being part of the theater scene in New York City. Please welcome Meg Pokrass.
Thank you so much, George, for including me in this beautiful book and for having me here with you guys tonight. As a recent expat, it has meant so much to me to be part of this anthology, and it's a wonderful feeling to be back in the city with you all again. Also, thank you so much, Francine, for all you do. And it's a real honor to read with you tonight. So the first poem I'll read is one in the anthology called Before the Audition, Times Square, 1990. You sang the off Broadway songs nobody wanted to hear. Flew through the starry city full of girls, girls, girls. Central Park wildings, muggers, cab drivers with parakeets, a tube of lipstick in your fist, like blood or prayer. The kiss me red pointing to your clamshell mouth. Your hips swayed through Riverside Park, uncurling your face to the sun. You were not stuck yet. Men had names like Guy and Tom. You felt sorry for all of them in your greedy young way. Their penises shrank and grew in your hands like mushrooms or flowers. This was a clockwise track they smile about years later. How a notch, a mole like you is never beautiful enough. And the next poem I'll read was published in Rattle. And it's a poem I wrote for the Poets Respond feature about the way America felt to me when Trump was in office and about the time that I left America. It's called America. I drive a Hummer in America because it is mighty, a mighty woman in a mountainous car. Nobody can faze me or tousle my spirit in that impossible thing. Dreams are primitive pests, laughable and like stick figure insects. I swat them away while reciting the names of African countries. I imagine speeding over land lumps with my very best friend, the two of us laughing about childish things. I am a child in America. Later, the phone rings. It is a telemarketer. The kitchen is a mess. She has a solution to something. There are marks up and down my body, welts like little dead kisses. Friends think I am sad, but they don't know about my plans. They have never lived in my house with that husband or that friend, or felt that breeze, the one that keeps me awake. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. You like do you drink Guinness in Scotland? What do they drink? Oh, that's Irish Guinness. Well, we now have with us a person who had a book out with Grey Weather for Media, who we all know. Surge, we had a very nice party for that book at Jazz Loft in Stony Brook. But she writes from a little cafe in Astoria on Titmore's Boulevard, I think it is. It's a very fine cafe that she likes to write at. Please welcome Michelle Whittaker.
Hi, everybody. Congratulations again, George and Francine, and it sounds like Don and Valerie. It's great to celebrate the book with all of you here. It was fun in Philly too. So I'm gonna read from the anthology. It's called Blue Banshee. She said she's a banshee in her tie-dye dancing sheet, flavored with salt and cockles. She said it's her favorite moo-moo, water spouting, hula hooping, acorns breaking her at the feet, stomping out the cherries, loading up the grapes, peach snapped off with wine water weight. She's off with her head, tossing her hair, that of Miss Mary Mack, with skin most black all down her back. Breaking men with moves of rubber bullets on the shard-like grass, blessing silver tins while kicking in empty beer mugs at the Shih Tzu, barking at the shaman drummers. Banshee screams, put down your automatics, put down your automatics. Banshee screams the Union Square, as if she's troubled, as if she's a dreamer on the make. She said, go ahead, like David Amram. Binge, flutter, tongue, scat and fluster. Wag that dog, wag the laurel. You can't pull off her Bahama, mama. She said she was losing herself while loosening themselves, smashing against the world, not as snapperlicious, nor as Band-Aid kitsch, but in protest. She said, we gotta protest. We gotta protect others' needs, her needs, them needs, while raiding through our vanity. Banshee said she's untired, like off a high rise, no longer wondering why the police can't touch her, won't ziplock this barricade because she has them set in a trance, dancing in her Banshee dance. And then the second poem is, was written in Queens. It's called Our Quarantine Story. During the pandemic, after he was laid off, it was his idea to forage for edible weeds around Queens when our food grew scarce. From the stoop, I would watch him crouch on one knee, his bare hands between telephone poles, pulling up green stars from the control joints under our mailbox full of clover mites and commercial flyers. I almost forgot how sprawl could be so quiet. When he returned inside, he'd rinse off the stalks, place a rolled lot on his tongue and then on mine. He mentioned how Sticky foods could be a delicacy in some cultures, as I turned my back and coughed them out. And later in the evening, he read to me about how Indigenous women prevented pregnancy by drinking cleaver tea, as he handed me a tall cup of it, swirling with clover honey, and my lack of choice in the matter. Thank you, everybody.
Michelle Whittaker, thank you. Speaking of drinking, Don Yorty says he drinks Lafroig single malt Scotch whiskey when he's in Scotland. I don't think I've ever spent that much money on a shot of whiskey in my life, but it's good stuff, Lafroig. Our next reader, he's probably drunk some of that. He's a submariner, an American submariner. I think he probably spent some time in Scotland. Phillip Giambri writes a lot about barflies in New York City and is known as the Ancient Mariner. Please welcome Phillip Giambri. Yes, microphone. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, George. Francine, Don, man, you guys put the stuff together. It's like herding cats. I appreciate it. And I did spend 2 years in Scotland. I didn't drink that good stuff either, though. I've lived on St. Mark's Place for 50 years, and I write story poems about people I've met. The Amorous Adventures of Blondie and Boho is a book about two people who represent all of the characters that I've lived with for the last 50 years. This one is in the anthology. It's called A Broken Bed and Bodega Beer. Saturday night, East Village, long happy hour at Blue and Gold Bar, fired up on well drinks. Blondie and Boho are ready to stalk. Two coyotes heading south, prowling the edge of Chinatown till they find a joint with loud music blasting from a tenement basement. Grab a couple of drinks and a seat way in the back, suddenly surrounded by middle-aged Jersey couples, fat, tired, and worn out, looking to relive their college days. Ain't long before Blondie and Boho are jumping, swaying, shaking hair and shaking ass, bodies vibrating to badass indie music, making out and tongue dancing between drinks. Jersey couples stare, awkward, nervous, embarrassed by this shameful display, but secretly wishing that they still had that kind of passion. Blonde coyote girl goes to the bar for refills, bumps their table, spilling all their drinks. Jersey couples are pissed. They get up and leave, don't even wait to see their band. Just know they're talking shit about the juvenile behavior of these two coyotes doing what they're doing. I'm thinking they're going to go home, jump in the sack, and just for a few minutes, maybe try to be coyotes again too. Good luck with that one, Jack. Blondie and Boho stay late till all the bands are done, head back to the East Village, talking and thinking dirty thoughts, itching for some playtime. Those two coyotes go to break that damn bed again, drink warmed up bodega beer, and hug till the sun comes up. Because that's what you do early Sunday morning, East Village. Thank you. This piece is called Brenda and Bubba. Brenda and Blondie are best buds. She works noon to 8 at Dave's on First Avenue and 7th Street, Wednesdays and Thursdays. Drinks are cheap and she pours heavy. Boho meets Blondie there around 1 for their weekly afternoon buzz fest. Bright sun filters through the large, dirty front window, illuminating a classic village dive joint with iconic late 60s jukebox and a pool table with warped sticks and chewed up felt. There are hard and fast rules here when Brenda's working. TV only shows Yankee games with the volume off. Her husband, Bubba, a recent Army vet, likes to watch the game while listening to Sultans of Swing. So you better not play anything else on the juke either while Bubba's there. He's going to pull the plug on you. Brenda's a worn-out version of Dolly Parton without the high hair and a thick muffin top where her waist used to be. Bubba's a younger version of Richie Havens. He loves Brenda, the Yankees, Dire Straits, and after completing 2 tours in Afghanistan, heroin. Everybody loves Bubba because he's so sweet on Brenda. He's so freaking mellow. Seems that all the best musicians who play the village, he's that fucking cool. Just don't mess with his Yankees game, his Sultans of Swing, or his woman, because then he's going to get all Green Beret on your ass. Blondie and Boho check out at Dave's around 4 with a good buzz, need for some playtime. Want to give that old bed another workout before dinner. It's funny how quick life changes around here, though. Jump ahead a couple weeks. Brenda calls Blondie, tell her Bubba's gone, dead from an overdose. Blondie and Boho are devastated. Such a sweet guy. Blondie and Boho meet at the bar to take up a collection, but barely enough raised for a cremation. What to do with his ashes? Well, they're resourceful if nothing else in the East Village. They put Bubba's ashes in a Maxwell House coffee can at the end of the bar under the TV set with his Yankee hat over the lid. Bubba's home. A couple months later, Brenda says the landlord sold the building. Bar's closing soon. Probably going to be remodeled into some bunhead hipster joint with high prices. So Brenda's out of work and Bubba lost his final resting place. Blondie and Boho get drunk with Brenda and cry while she's hugging Bubba in that coffee can. Thank you.
Now we're going to have reading for Scotty, Robert Scotellaro, who I should point out is, in addition to being one of several flash fiction people in the book, is also one of the several people published by Blue Light Press, which is the publisher of this anthology. Blue Light Press, Diane Frank, has done a collection for Meg and for Francine and for Robert Scotellaro and myself as well. So very nice connection we have with the West Coast with Blue Light Press. Francine, let's hear from you.
Okay, so thank you, George. I'm going to be reading for, we call him Scotty, he's a very lovely man, and his connection, in fact, to the Norton that Meg and I were in a few years ago, the Norton, like New Micro, was he was one of the editors. So that's kind of a big deal. But he's a very lovely man, and he's been not well lately, so he's asked me to read for him. This is called Caruso Sweating and Big Nick in His Underwear. On the hottest day of summer, when everybody's windows were open wide, he'd come around an old Italian wino sweating beneath the heavy wool overcoat 4 sizes too large. He used to roam the backyards between the tenement buildings and sing great songs in Italian with a clear and powerful voice. And people would lean out their windows and throw money. Kids would sit with their legs hanging over fire escapes with their mouths open. When he was finished, the old man would bend over like a bird and pick up coins and fill the pockets of his great overcoat. Sometimes, when Big Nick was home drinking beer in his underwear, he'd yell down to him, "Bravo, bravo, hey, Caruso here." And he'd throw out a fistful of singles. And the old man with sweat running down his face would stand under his window and pour out his soul and sing Nick's favorite, Male Femina. And many of the women would cry and the sun would shine down through the hot, muggy summer, and it would rain money in the backyards. Robert Scotellaro.
Robert Scotellaro. Great poem. Great, thank you. Male Femina, Male Femina. You know that song, George? George Guida? You do, he knows.
I'm not singing it though, forget it.
Good, good, that's even better. We reached the S, Sharon Mesmer. Even though Scotty comes before Sharon, Sharon, we all know, we all love her. It's such a pleasure to have her here with us today. Really, I thought we weren't going to have an opportunity to see her. There was like some technical issue, but great that we see you here from NYU, from the New School, teaches creative writing, and it's just everywhere in all the finest journals. Please welcome Sharon Mesmer.
Thank you, George. Thanks, Don, and thanks, Francine. The technical difficulties were just me being a dumbass. So thanks for being patient. I'm actually in Pennsylvania right now, and I'm hoping I can get through my 3-minute reading without the power going out, because every time it rains up here, the power goes out. So I'm going to, I just want to say I'm really happy and I'm really honored to be in the book. So many people that I know that I see here today that I haven't seen for a long time, like Joanne and Bruce and Don Yorty. Okay, so I'm just going to read because I'm the last one and I don't want to take up that much time. The first poem I'm going to read is the poem that's in the anthology, and it's called Lou Reed's New York. And I wrote it a million years ago when I was like listening. I was half listening to an interview with Lou Reed on the radio. And all the stanzas are basically things that he said, except the last stanza is mine. So Lou Reed's New York. In Europe, they're much more receptive to utility and famous figures from disco on skates. In America, if you keep looking for beauty, you'll get run over by a pylon, to say nothing of the contradictions of butcher shops. I believe we're here at the beginning of the biggest change ever, and everybody should be out making music. I was there at the beginning on either side of the vinyl, and I was amazed at the amount of wasted information. Everything was wretched, to say the least. Then God said, I'm going to take film away, but in return, you get 3 new colors. We do it with razors and light animals. And Michelangelo said, wow. We used to reminisce about how nice and clean things were, but now what we miss is filth. And then the second poem is about hanging out with friends in Brooklyn, and it's called Just This. It came to me suddenly. 3 Dog Night were really great. And the revelation engendered a seizure that revealed the ephemerality of eternity, how Theseus in the labyrinth is everyone's predicament, how the milk of 3 ornery daughters spawned irony, and how every morning trails clouds of glory. But it was after midnight that things got interesting. In the low ceiling kitchen with the slop sink sweating and the door to the back garden open, and us, the only ones on the block, still awake. The next day, a powerful wind whipped through Yankee Stadium. I saw it on television. And 8 minutes later, it arrived in Brooklyn to disturb the birds nesting in the air conditioner. Proof that everything is always beginning and becoming. To bring it into being means always deploying. Because the portal to the river of cordial closed in 1960, reducing me and all who came after me to a cowboy vulgarity, to fluidity on a wave of dissipation, but thus a deeper appreciation for the play of changing light and shadow on a window fan on a rainy day, and the certainty that the light we imagine we see, with eyes half closed, squinting into trees, is the most beautiful anyone's ever seen. I believe I should like to decorate your life with a painted scale model of the Apollo 11 lunar module, and then bow out in a blaze of italics, anxious for exit, yet anxious to persist. And so I'll go erase the notes for this poem so that you'll believe it came to me on its own as just this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sharon Mesmer, thank you so much. You know, there's 8 or 10 people whose work are in the book, whose work is in the book, right? That have passed on almost all of every one of them during the time when I was gathering the material together. Steve Dalachinsky, Steve Cannon, Miguel Algarin, and Robert Bly, and Robert Hershon, Diane DePrima, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I mean, so many really fine ones that we kind of feel it'd be nice to read 1 or 2 poems from the people who have left us but are in the book. So to do that, Francine's going to read a poem by Robert Bly, who not everybody may think of as being a New York City poet. He lived on Bleecker Street for a while, and Also taught at NYU for a number of years. Our friend Phillip Asaph actually studied with him and moved him out of his apartment. So he's a New York City poet in that sense and reflects on New York. And then also Robert Hershon, who most of you know as being from Hanging Loose Press, very important instrumental. And his poem about, you know, when you go to a liquor store that's got like this thick glass and the bottle comes out, you know, like one of those chutes comes out to you when you buy your bottle of liquor. So it's a really very interesting poem. So she's going to read 2 poems for us from people that are no longer with us. Francine.
Thank you, George. So first I'll read Robert Hershon. It's called Rick's Liquors. Looks like any liquor store until you get inside and discover that Rick, is that you? And all Rick's bottles and cash are behind plastic bulletproof partitions. And there's no way you can get within 2 feet of Rick or anything that belongs to Rick. We got tired of being ripped off and locked in the can. Says Rick, sending your bottle down a little chute. It's Robert Hershon. And the second poem is by Robert Bly, as George mentioned. I have this amazing memory of when I was in Binghamton, I got my master's there, and Robert Bly came to do a reading. And I thought, you know, okay, I'm gonna hear a reading, you know, like you do. And it was 2 hours of him philosophizing, playing the ukulele, and giving some of the best advice ever. You know, just amazing, just an amazing presence. 2 hours went like 5 minutes, and one of the best readings I've ever been to. So, Robert Bly. Winter afternoon in Greenwich Village. It is Sunday afternoon. The shadows seem so frightening on the brownstone sills. The Missouri River must be flowing the same muddy brown. The bullboats cross the river silently in the naked moonlight. I cannot say why a Sunday afternoon in a New York apartment should seem to be night among the teepees at Jackson Hole. Jim Bridger lugs his Shakespeare through the stumps. In his shack, he swears at Iago far into the night. Outdoors, a beaver swims in the mountain stream, feeling with his nose the door of his home like a beehive, moving in a darkness the color of Indian hair. The tips of the small willows move above the silent water. Robert Bly. Okay, so I think everybody that we had on the list has read. Yes, just like one final shout out, because if that's true, if everyone has read, and thank you everybody for being so wonderful and showing up and all that, and just, you know, just doing such a beautiful job. But we must hear from our editor, the very wonderful George Wallace.
Oh, blush. Right. Very good. I will read from Walking on 10th Street. And the names in this poem have been changed to protect those who you know. Walking on 10th Street. We're walking on 10th Street in the direction of the Neptune Diner. It's a Polish diner, which Simon likes to go to, but you have to get there before 11 a.m. if you want the breakfast special. That's important because Simon likes to arrive while they're still offering brunch, which means unlimited orange juice and endless hot cups of coffee when we run into Max Camber. But no time to stop and talk. And besides, Simon doesn't like Max Camber these days. He doesn't want to talk to Max Camber these days. And even though he knows that Max studied film at UCLA, he still doesn't know how to approach his subjects with what Simon likes to call sympathetic objectivity. And we shake hands with Max, and we keep on walking. Eventually we get to Avenue A, where the Korean greengrocer is warming his hands over a chestnut fire, and a light rain is coming down. And Simon tells me about his recent visit to P-Town, where he is editing the selected works of Robert Creeley, and how good it is to work with Creeley's son, because the man's devotion to his father is admirable, complete, and entirely sincere. And it's spring in the city, and the tourists are returning. I don't like the last time I came to town to visit Simon, but that was a different situation. We were on our way to drink red wine and listen to jazz at Mo Pitkin's. And we're both of us looking sharp and photogenic and carefree on Avenue A when some protesters started to crank things up. Crazy, said Simon. And it was crazy. It was crazy and colorful and gay. It was a parade of angry flowers. It was the Rose Bowl parade. It was Thanksgiving parade and St. Patty's parade and maybe even Christmas in July. And we stopped to watch them and shout things out and smile at them with their big angry banners and their coterie of cops. But like I say, it was a while ago. We were angels of the New York City night, whereas this is a Thursday morning in spring. And when we get to the diner, it's already 11:30, says the waitress in her polite but sad Polish accent, over the bustling sound of waitresses, counter help, busboys, dishwashers, spoons, plates, customers, the joyful crash and clink of the world. And we look at the clock on the wall, and we're at each other in our ragged clothes, and we looked at her and the entire Western world working for a living, except us. We don't care anymore. We're happy now. We found each other. We don't even mind paying full fare for our eggs over easy and rye toast. Walking on 10th Street. Thank you. Well, listen, everybody, this has been a lot of fun, 4:37, you delivered this in time. Thank you again, Don. Coming up, April 30th, El Barrio Art Space. May 6th, Walt Whitman Birthplace, that's a Zoom. May 11th, live at the KGB Bar. May 15th, Parkside from the Inside, live. May 21st, Brooklyn Public Library in the Bronx, Zooming. Once again, thank you, Lorraine Corelli, for that. Then May 21st, that's the same one. That's it. That's it through May. More coming up in June and July. I really appreciate everybody's participation who was in the book, and those of you who did not get to read from it today, we're going to get you in there. So come on back and we're going to have a lot more fun with the book. Francine, thanks again. Don, thanks again. Questions, comments? If not, we'll call this recording over and done.